every single Friday I used to leave school and go to my grandmother's house, which is not far from where I lived. I used to be in the kitchen, and I used to eat, what's it called? Chopped herring. She used to make the whole kiddush, make a kiddush. Every single week she made a kiddush single-handed for the shul.
And back then you used to make it and not buy it.
Right, made it from beginning to end.
Good old days.
Interesting people. No
learning.
There wasn't any learning. There wasn't anybody to tell you. There wasn't anybody to discuss the talk about. There was no this. So when you built the shul, you had to bring a Rav, right? So he paid the Rav's salary. And it wasn't enough for the Rav to live anywhere. So he put the Rav and lived in his house.
Oh.
And when the Rav came, his name was Rabbi Moshe Morris Lambi, he said to him, David, he said, what's wrong with you? You've got 2 girls here and they're not married. He said, yeah, he says, all the men are in the army. So they hadn't come back yet from the Second World War. They hadn't come back from the Far East where we all were. So he says, just a minute, picks up the phone. It dials my father, who was working in a factory for the government to avoid going into the army. He says, Albert, get on the next train to St. Albans. We got to Paddington Station, got it? And my father came down and he says, which one do you want?
Really? Was that
That was the shidduch. Shisa, mitzvah, Gore's mitzvah.
Wow.
I should really write out the history of the family.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to learn, hopefully, 2 things.
We have a story as well.
Oh, no?
You want the story first, right?
Yeah, the story first. The stories always come first.
Okay, so I have to get the name of the guy right before I'm going to say the guy's name. 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Oh, so there was a chassid who, Mordechai Chanukah. Mordechai Chanukah found himself behind bars more than he found himself in front of bars. He was one of the Friedrich Rebbe's chassidim. And he went around Russia all the time doing Mitzrayim. And of course he got arrested and they put him into a forced labor camp and he got 10 years for that. After he came out of it, he carried on doing Mitzrayim, so they gave him another 5 years. And then he came back and he did more Mitzrayim and they gave him another 6 years. He did 21 years in the labor camp. So in the middle of all this, he was in a camp and there were a lot of Jews there and they were all talking to each other and they said, you know, it's Chanukah. We've got to light at least 1 candle for Chanukah. So somebody pulled a few threads out of his mattress and somebody else stole a little piece of butter from the kitchen and somebody else stole the top of a bottle or whatever it was. And 18 of them all gathered together one evening late at night and they lit the first Chanukah candle. Mordechai Chanukah lit the candle and he started to cry with tears and they were all standing there so, moved by the fact they lit a Chanukah candle. And as they're standing and watching it, suddenly a whole squad of thugs burst in with their dogs, the guards, and they're all arrested. Counter-revolutionary activity, lighting a light without permission. They took the 18 of them and threw them all in one cell together, and the next morning they brought before the judge. So the judge, he already knows what the judge is going to say. He has a tiny little room and there's a table with the judge and him, and stands and says, you're accused of counter-revolutionary activities. The sentence is death by firing squad. What are you going to say for yourself? So he said, Tony says, is this just me or is it all the 18? Thinking, if it's me, okay, it's me, but if it's everybody, of course, everybody to be shot. So he says, all 18 of you are all going to be shot. So Mordechai Chanukah just broke down. That was the last straw. And he started crying and sobbing. So after about 10 minutes, the judge says to him, what's your problem? He says, if I've got to be shot, I've got to be shot. It's thinking I've taken 18 men who are married and have children, and they're going to be shot because of me. So the judge says, well, tell the truth. You were really trying to signal to the enemy and tell them, where he was and could come and blow up. He says, no. He says, I'll tell you the truth. So the scientist is going to tell him the truth. So taking a deep breath, he said, we're Jewish, and it's Chanukah. And we're lighting a light for Chanukah. So the judge says, oh, Chanukah lights. Oh, you were lighting Chanukah candles. Oh, tell me about yourself. Turns around to the two guards and he throws them out. He locks the door and he says, tell me all about yourself. So he says this and this is found this and that. So he says, oh, so you're a rabbi. I said, yeah. You lighting Chanukah candles, yeah. He says, your problem is you don't know how to light Chanukah candles. You don't do it right. He says, come, I'll show you how you light Chanukah candles. So he takes the 18 indictment pages and there's a little lamp next to his desk and he lights the lamp with a match. Then he takes the first indictment page and he burns it. He says, okay, that's one Chanukah candle. Takes the next one and burns it. And he's burned all 18 pages. And he picks up all the pieces of dust and dirt, opens the window and throws it all out. So there's no trace of the things. He says, that's how you light Chanukah candles. So then he calls the guards, and as the guards are coming, he says, just one thing, he says, make sure that my children and your children will light Chanukah candles when they grow up. He calls the guards in and he says, it's not worth a bullet on these swine, right? Waste of a bullet. Take them back to the camp, put everyone in a different room and make sure they never speak to each other ever again. Case dismissed. He then became, in 1953 when Stalin died, so he became the secretary to the chief rabbi of Russia in Moscow. And then 10 years later, the Rebbe literally took him out and he came to Benedict with his brother. See, that's the way he likes.
Where'd you hear this?
What's good? Tell us.
It's
a good story.
So these are two very, very short, you can't even call them Maimarim by later standards. No, they're like these are like the early teachings of the Alter Rebbe. Not so early, it's Taf Kuf Nun Gimel, meaning 1792.
Oh, that's very
and he said it in Chanukah. He said both of these in 1792 and Chanukah.
Long before the first debate.
Yeah, so the thing we learned before was 8 years later, from 1800. That's what we learned until now. V'aya midei chodesh b'chodsho midei Shabbat b'Shabbato. So it will be, says Isaiah, every month and every week, every Shabbos. Yavo kol basar lishtachavot lefanai. Every flesh, meaning all people, will come to bow before me. טוב? כתיב ששת ימים תעשה מעשיך וביום השביעי תשבות וחריש ובקציר תשבות. One of the 13, I believe, times that Shabbos is mentioned in the Chumash. It says 6 days you shall do your work, and on the 7th day you shall stop working. From what? Charish v'katzir. Charish is plowing, and katzir is sowing. Tishbot, you shall stop. V'hu tamua, it's very well known. There's a question, מה שפרט הכתוב עניין חרישה וקצירה יותר מכל המלאכות? Why did it mention these two types of work?
So there must be something you can learn from this, that you can learn from that, and something from that, you can learn from this.
Usually what we say is that it's also talking about Shemitah, about the 7th, not just the 7th day, but the 7th year. But that's another issue. So what does this got to do with anything? It says, "V'nicheu began Eden le'ovda u'leshomra." V'lichora tamua, ma tzarich began Eden le'avoda ve'leshmira. So another introduction. When God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden, He said it's for working it and safeguarding it. And again, the question: why does Gan Eden need somebody to work it and to safeguard it? And what's it good for?
Obviously, it wasn't the same Gan Eden that we know in the root sense.
So, a lot of people explain it that way, that he's talking about something that wasn't physical, but we understand it was physical. The pshat of the Torah is that it was a physical place, and he was there. והובן זה, והנה לכאורה תמוה על רז"ל שכתבו עניין העולם הבא, כי יותר טוב היה שלא נדע שום שכר, וכדי שלא יהיה על מנת לקבל פרס. It says, it's very interesting. The Torah doesn't discuss the world of the afterlife. Where does it discuss it? The closest thing that it says...
Be gathered unto your people.
Video. I was just going to say that. That's the closest thing. What does it mean? You're gathered unto your people, but what does it mean? Bury you with your people. It doesn't mean that there is an afterlife. The afterlife is discussed by the sages. So he says, what did the sages reveal this for? What good is it?
There is some, right? Because at the very, very end of the Chumash, Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, go up into this mountain. And then Rashi says that, and I would have kept you alive to take you into Eretz Yisrael to go and report back to Abraham and Yaakov that the Jews came in. But
again, that's right. Rashi is basing it on Chazal. And the Pshat of the Chumash, there's no mention of this. So why even mention that there's a Gan Eden? Why even mention that there is an afterlife? Because it would be better that we wouldn't know that there is reward for what we do. Why? Because that's how the Rambam explains. It says the moment that the child knows that there's a reward for what he's doing, what will happen? He'll do things for the reward. And he won't do things for their essence, for their intrinsic value.
okay.
And he says the Rambam, which is better? What's considered higher type of service, higher type of work? When you do something for its intrinsic value. So by telling me that there's a reward, psychologically you're necessarily lessening my involvement in what I'm doing.
But without the knowledge that there's a reward, most people wouldn't be able to do what they need to do. They can say, okay, I know there's a reward, I'm not doing it for the reward, but it's nice to know that it's there at the end of time.
But for most people, it would ruin it. Also, it would ruin the whole process of working. You understand? You become like a little child who's working for the cookie. And should that be the lifetime involvement, the lifetime work of a person? So that's hard. Why did they even tell us about this? אבל העניין הוא דאית השכר מצווה מצווה. דהיינו שמהשכר נבין המצווה. It says also that the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. So from the reward we can understand the mitzvah. וזה שברך התנא לחברו עולמך תראה בחייך. דהיינו, כל מה שידוע בעולם הבא, ובזה העולם בעבודת הבורא. So it's a little hard to understand what he wants to say. But he's saying, look, I think what he's saying is that when one sage said to the other as a blessing, you'll see your world in your life, what did he mean to say? He meant to say that all that will be known in the world to come, meaning in the afterlife, will already be here in your service of Hashem. Meaning that the sechal, the mitzvah, will already be here, not just in the afterlife. Tov. גם העמוד מגן עדן תחתון וכולו, שבו עולם הנשמות, כן הוא בזה העולם. He says, even this reference that the sages make to a pillar through which you move from one level to another, מגן עדן תחתון מגן עדן עליון, you move through the levels. We talked about this. This is the pillar of absolute nullification, usually. It says it's bittul. And that's how you move. That also exists in this world. So, meaning you can see the reward in this world. If you can see the reward, you can understand what the world to come is. And even the Gan Eden, the pillar that moves you from different levels to different levels within Gan Eden, that I guess you call the transit system, that also exists in this world. How does it work? והנה עניין החרישה היא מרפא ערה, דהיינו להכניע גוף. שבאמת כל אחד בישראל יש לו רצון שהוא למעלה מן השכל, אבל הגוף הגשמי מסתיר הדבר. He says, from the pasuk that we just started, it says that you should do your actions for 6 days, and then the 7th day you'll rest. That's a direct reference to the world, to the afterlife. You'll work for as long as you work, and then you rest. What do you rest from? From charisha. What is charisha? What does plowing mean? It means turning the earth upside down. Marpe ara. It's like weakening, softening the earth. By turning it upside down, you're weakening it. And that corresponds to weakening the body, or submitting the body, overcoming the body, nachnia guf. Because really, every Jewish person has a will that is above his mind, right? We already saw that there's will and there's will, it ratzon v'it ratzon. So the will that's above the mind is from the keter, is from the crown. אבל הגוף הגשמי מסתיר הדבר, but the physical body conceals it. וזהו עניין החרישה, that's what plowing means, להכניע בכל מדי אפשר איך שיהיה, אפילו בניצחון, דהיינו שבכל דבר יעשה היפוך רצון הגוף. וכשיעשה כן ממילא, יתגלה אצלו הטוב הגנוז. So that everything what you should be doing is the opposite from what the body wants. Again, the body here is not whether it wants to eat or drink necessarily. We're talking about the mundane aspects of yourself, right? The thing that you're pursuing, the physical pursuits that you have, the mundane pursuits that you have. If you go against them, if you submit them, if you're able to overcome them, then then you will reveal the already existing hidden light within you. And remember, this is in the same time period that he's writing the Tanya. Because he started, well, I don't know exactly when he started writing the Tanya. So they say for 20 years. So he started in Tafkuf Lamed Tet, Tafkuf Mem.
I think it started around here.
3 years after. Okay? So it was 3 years after, 6 years after the Maggid passed away, and then he's saying it's the same year that his daughter passed away. That can't be exactly, because the Tzemach Tzedek, we're talking about, who's the daughter's mother, was born in Tafkuf Nun.
The daughter's son.
Right, sorry. Daughter's son. He was born in Tafkuf Nun. So he was born in 1790. That was the year that he said the Maimer that became the first 3 chapters of the Tanya. Doesn't mean that he didn't write everything the other parts before it. But if she passed away when she gave birth to him, so or shortly after.
No, she was about 2 when he passed away.
Oh, okay. So
Okay,
so she passed away in Tafkuf Nun Bet. So that's not possible, because he finished the Tanya in Tafkuf. It was printed in Tafkuf Nun Zayin. So 20 years before, if he was writing it for 20 years, in Tafkuf Mem Zayin is when he started. So in 17. I want to say, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Sorry, Nun Zayin, Mem Zayin, Lamed Zayin. So he started writing it according to that story. He started writing it in 1776 or 1777. It's very interesting. In any case, it wasn't printed yet. So this is very much the ideas that appear in the Tanya. So you see it right away that this is the same thing. This is not the advanced Chassidus that he began to say after he was arrested. So when you go against the body's will, what you're doing is revealing a light. And that's very different than everybody who said before that when you have to go against the body's will, against the mundane, to serve Hashem. They didn't say that when you begin to go against the nature of your body, of your physical needs, of your mundane needs, then a hidden light begins to shine. It's a very different concept. Because people thought that you stay in a state of submission all the time. But here he's saying that when you submit, then eventually you uncovered that there was something more inside of you that you didn't know about. And that's very different. Vazriya, so that's the charisha. That's loosening the earth. Or going against the physical, mundane pursuits. Vazriya u'oz zarua latzaddik. And to sow, and to plant, it doesn't say here in the pasuk zriya. We only have charisha v'ktira. We only have plowing, and did I say sowing before? Yeah, sowing. So here, but planting or planting the seeds, that it doesn't say here. Still, planting the seeds is part of it, because between when you plow and when you sow, so you also have to plant something, right? You plow in order to plant. So the planting, he says, tzaddik, is the light that is already planted for the righteous person. Ve'ahavta begimatria shnei pamim ol. And you see here already this gematria that we saw before also, that to love means 2 times light. And you can see all the time that he's referring to himself, right? Because his name is Shneor, 2 times light. So you have here that there's light that's already planted within the tzaddik, and to love means 2 times light, shu or yashar ve'or chozer, which is what we call direct light and returning light, or reflected light. And what are direct light and reflected light? That Hashem planted within you the great love. I'm calling it great because it came from above. We didn't make it happen. It's simply something that we were given as a given. Okay, every Jew has it. We saw this last week also, or beginning of this week. Ve'avat olam, and then the love that comes from our work. Because avat olam is that I contemplate how Hashem creates the universe, right? I contemplate that Hashem is my life force. I do all these things. באמת קשה לכאורה איך לבוא לאהבת השם במסירות נפש. Because it's really difficult to understand how a person can come to love Hashem so much that he could have mesiras nefesh, that he could sacrifice his life for it. אך התירוץ הוא ואהבת בגימטריה 2 פעמים אור. But the answer is that really there's 2 types of light, like we just said. כי מתחילה בא אור ממנו יתברך בדרך זירה, because Hashem first of all plants love of Hashem in you, so that's ingrained in you. And I guess ingrained, I didn't think about that, but it's like putting grain into the earth. It's ingrained. ואחר כך האור חוזר, כמשל הזריעה, שלא יצמח עד שיכלה הגרעין ההוא, ונעשה ממנו עין ממש. ואחר כך יוצאים ממנו כמה גרעינים. And then what happens? If he planted it in you, it's called אור זרוע לצדיק. This light is planted in the person. Then, by being planted, it's supposed to grow. And what happens when it grows? Meaning that the garin itself, the seed itself, meaning the avar rabba, is like it deteriorates until it disappears. And then it grows something new. Something new grows out of it. So we see that there's a process of becoming nothingness. Meaning the avar rabba is like a seed. He says has to completely nullify. So here's your mesiras nefesh. Because where did you get the power of mesiras nefesh? You got it from the very fact that Hashem planted within you the avar rabba, the great love, the love that comes from above. As a result, you get a lot of avat olam. You get a lot of love from below. וזהו ליבבתיני אחותי קרא ליבבתיני באחת מעינייך, עינייך הוא רצון עינייך יונים, מה יונה אינה נזקקת אלא לבת זוגה, כך ישראל אינם נזקקים לרצון אביהם שבשמיים. So what is he saying? That all the love that we give Hashem, libavtini, is like you love me. I think we talked about this once. But the word love in English comes from apparently the word lev in Hebrew.
Maybe.
You're not impressed by that?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't think English was clever enough to write in English.
Why?
It's still Hebrew words. Anyway.
First of all, it's not just in English, it's in German, it's in many European languages. Maybe it came from something else, but I think that that's what it means.
Okay. All right.
You see Lubavitch, for instance. So that's in Russian, it's the same thing.
Luba.
Luba means love. There's many languages that comes from. I think that there's a good basis for saying that there's some connection like that. I don't know how strong it is. So anyway, so you love me with one of your eyes. And every time we say ratzon, every time we say eyes, einayich hu ratzon, what you see, I believe, is what you want. The eyes see and the person wants. I'm not sure that that's what he means here, but there's a connection between seeing and the eyes. Seeing and the eyes, seeing and wanting. And what's the idea here? That the Yonah is called that. Why is she called the Yonah? Am Yisrael are described as a pigeon, as a dove.
What is your neck?
Really? Where'd you get that? It's a bird. It doesn't. It's not your neck or anything.
No, Jewish people.
But why is the Yonah called the Yonah? Because Yonah comes from the word ayin. There's two possible etymologies. The one doesn't make so much sense. The other makes a lot more sense. The one possible is it comes from ona'ah. Ona'ah is like cheating someone, deception. It doesn't make a lot of sense for a Yonah. A lot of times it says in the prophets, cherev hayonah, the sword that descended on us because we deceived one another. It's like a punishment. But it doesn't sound right. Here it's Yonah comes from ayin. And if ayin means will, so that means that the dove is an expression of will. What's the expression? That it only has one will. It can only connect with one mate its whole life. So its will is single dimensional. It can only do one thing. It can only want to do one thing. The same way, the Jewish people, they can only connect with Hashem. They can't connect to anything else. So you see, because this is early, he's not explaining. This is like, I could read this and tell you this is from, I don't know, from the Koznitzer. I could tell you it's from the Rebbe of Abt. I could tell you it's from, whoever else was it from, Levi Yitzchak Berditchev. You wouldn't know the difference. It's psukim, and this is this, this is this, this is this, this is that. No explanations. Or very little, very hard. You have to piece it through to understand what he wants. You see, this is his early stuff.
When we finish tomorrow, because we have to go.
So,
There's no meeting anyway. Was it meeting yesterday?
yeah, of course. A very big minion.
What happened today?
I don't know. We'll see in a second. I'm sure that people will be coming.
What's it?